Just one more mountain to climb before
It's about just two men now. It's a head-to-head between Ireland's Stephen Roche and the Spaniard Pedro Delgado. The durable Roche, who's ridden the race of his life in pursuit of the yellow jersey, was all smiles when he took a breath of fresh air this morning, surrounded by the world's press. There wasn't a hint of nerves. Good evening. Roche ready to join cycling's greats then, but it's by no means over yet. We've been reminded previously, indeed seen time and again on this tour, the effect that the yellow jersey can have on the man who's wearing it. The gap between the two is 21 seconds. Delgado wanted something like 2 minutes going into this time trial. He thought he would put that gap together in the mountains, but as we know now, Roche had other ideas. Both riders know that Roche is the better time trialist. Indeed, the French sports newspaper L'Equipe yesterday listed the 8 tour time trials in which the two riders have been involved since 1983. They then compared the two riders' times at 38 kilometres, the distance of today's course, and found that Roche's smallest winning margin was 38 seconds, and Roche's biggest winning margin was 4 minutes and 7 seconds. Their conclusion, Delgado has no chance. It's not as clear-cut as that, but it would be another major surprise if Roche wasn't in yellow at the end of the day. Here's Phil Liggett.
Well, indeed it would, Richard, and this is the most important time trial in Stephen Roche's life, because he wants to win more than 21 seconds today over Delgado, and then he would certainly win this Tour de France tomorrow. Nobody doubts that. So Stephen Roche preparing now for the greatest ride of his career. And so it looks like the ANC Halfords team will finish 4 of their men in Paris tomorrow. Malcolm Elliott today was on a good ride early on. He caught his 2-minute man, Ludo Peters, from Belgium. Then he caught the man who started 4 minutes ahead, Celestino Prieto, and at times he topped speeds of over 40 miles an hour. Malcolm Elliott finished in 52 minutes and 10 seconds, and his teammate Adrian Timmis came home with a time of 53 minutes and 4 seconds. Well, there is the current situation in the time trial at the moment, with all the stars still to come. Jesper Skibby, the Danish time trialist, on top of the leaderboard again, as he was on Mont Ventoux, with a time of 50 minutes 47 seconds for this 23.5 miles time trial. A marvellous time indeed. Michel Ingerin is second at 5 seconds behind, and Peter Stevenhagen of Holland is third. But of course, all the top riders still to come, and you can bet your life there'll be some changes today. And the face of concentration of Stephen Roche as he waits for the call to the line. He starts at 3 minutes gap on the rider who's in front of him, already gone, Francois Pienaar. This must surely be the tensest moment in the life of Stephen Roche as a professional racing cyclist. He's not only trying to win the Tour de France now, he's trying also to become only the 4th rider in history to win the double. And the arrival of Robert Miller here at the other end of the course, in fact just a couple of 100 yards from where Roche is waiting to start, because this is a straight out and home course. Now we've got Robert Miller coming up here. His time well outside that of Jesper Skibby, 52.29, 16th place at the moment for Robert Miller. But unfortunately, Robert has suffered in this Tour, and his face shows it all. He's no longer a contender in this race. And there is Stephen Roche now waiting for the start. The only riders who have won the double, the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France in the same year, the great names in the world of cycling, Bernardino, Eddy Merckx, Jacques Anquetil, and Fausto Coppi, the Italian. Stephen Roche will put his name on the most honourable list in the world of cycling if only he can do the ride today, which he knows he's capable of. 21 seconds, it's all he needs, because on the road to Paris tomorrow, as will be the way of the Tour de France, you can rest assured Delgado probably will not be able to attack him. Well, I've never ever seen the concentration of Stephen Roche like this in my life before. the pressure of the day. He's really feeling it. Being held up, waiting for what must seem like an eternity, the 3-minute wait since Jean-Francois Pienaar went off up the road. No longer a challenger in third place overall. There's only 2 men in this Tour de France now, Stephen Roche and the yellow jersey of Pedro Delgado. You could almost sense the electricity in the air here today at Dijon. The duel between 2 men, and Stephen Roche is on his way. And I'm sure, Paul, he's on his way towards a yellow jersey.
Well, this is probably the most important time trial of Stephen's life, and as we watch him go down the finishing straight there, the starting straight, sorry, he started quite slowly, obviously quite confident, doesn't want to ride the first kilometre too fast and go into that oxygen debt, that lactic acid build-up, and starting quite slowly, and then he'll build up, move up through the gears, and hopefully he'll get a time check after about 5 kilometres of how far behind him Delgado is, and that's the only time check he'll get, because Delgado will have the advantage starting behind Stephen Roche.
It's a hard start, in fact, Paul, with this headwind that seems to be blowing quite strongly, and also the hills before as well.
Well, all the riders who've gone so far this morning have said it's very, very hard on the way out. You use quite a low gear for the specialists. They're using either a 14-tooth sprocket or a 15-tooth sprocket. And then from the top of the climb on the way back, it's very, very fast. They're using the maximum gear, either a 53 ring or a 54 ring, and coming back in the 12 sprocket at speeds of up to 40 miles an hour.
I mean, the pressure on Roche, time trialing is such a composed discipline, isn't it? And Roche is obviously now very, very nervous. These first few miles will be purely settling in, won't they?
Well, this is one of the most important things. You've got to, the build-up, the concentration, the psychological approach probably counts for 90% of a rider's ride in a time trial. Stephen's built himself up psychologically since last night when he wouldn't see anybody, and Delgado almost looking down there to see how Roche is getting on.
Isn't it amazing, this Tour de France, after 2,400 plus miles, there is a matter of 265 yards, that's all, separates these two riders, and that's 21 seconds at 40 kilometres an hour. So Delgado is back at the start line, while Roche is now settling into what everybody calls the race of truth. It's when you can't hide from anything, the watch never lies. You've got to produce the goods, and Stephen Roche has beaten Delgado 8 times in the Tour de France in previous time trials. In fact, Delgado's only beaten him once, and that was on the climb up the Puy de Dôme in the Massif Central, a totally different type of course as to the one today. So that's why Stephen Roche has the confidence to pull off this fantastic victory in the Tour de France. There is Pedro Delgado, and he has been a tremendous competitor, and as we so often say, when you do wear the leader's yellow jersey in this race, it does things to the morale and to the rider, and that is why Roche will be very frightened and won't feel happy until he gets some indication as they pass through the checkpoints as to his progress today. Pedro Delgado this morning was out training for an hour and a half, as was Stephen Roche, and as luck would have it, the two riders passed each other while they were warming up, and Stephen Roche even had a kindly word for him as he went the other way. Well, the Tour de France has come down to just 2 men. Now we can see those 2 men as 3 minutes behind on the road. The yellow jersey of Delgado shoots out of the start house, and we're back now live at the finish as Denis Roux comes in with a time of 54 minutes 13, and he won't endanger the leader at the moment, Jesper Skibby. And there is Stephen Roche now on the ride, we hope, of his life as he heads out to complete this 24 miles time trial today. Don't go away. This is going to be the decisive day of the Tour de France. Please come back.
Welcome back. Roche and Delgado are on their way. Roche, I can tell you, off to a flyer. He's pulled back virtually the whole gap, 19 seconds of it, inside the first 10 kilometres. Let's rejoin Phil.
Jean-Francois Pienaar, the best time there, but Roche 16 seconds behind him, and look at the gap. Pedro Delgado now is losing time rapidly to Stephen Roche at the 10-kilometre point. And a marvellous finish here by Marino Lageretta. Oh, he goes top of the board by 2 seconds. That's a great ride by the Spaniard. 50 minutes, 45 seconds. So Lagiretta is now the new leader. That's a little bit of a surprise, but there's plenty of surprises in this Tour de France today. There's Stephen Roche now coming up towards the top of the Côte de Val-Suzon, a climb of some 1,500 feet. That is the leaderboard at the moment. Confirmation there of Lagiretta on top, Jesper Skibby back in second place. But all these names better make way now for Stephen Roche, because the news is that at 18 kilometres of the race to go, half distance, he leads Pedro Delgado of Spain by 41 seconds, which means he's the yellow jersey now by 20 seconds, and still his most favourable part of the course to come, Paul.
Well, Stephen's chosen a bigger gear today than Pedro Delgado, because the descent from the top of this climb to the finish is very, very quickly. And a lot of the rides have been coming in at 35, 40 miles an hour. And Stephen's chosen this bracket, and obviously must have been around the circuit this morning to check out, decided which kind of wheels to use, because as you can see, both of the riders here, Pedro Delgado, who is actually fighting his way up for this climb, trying to get back into contention with Stephen Roche, has chosen the same kind of wheels as Stephen Roche, a solid back wheel and a normal classical front wheel with spokes, although it's slightly smaller than the back wheel.
Well, here's Delgado rolling this big gear. There is the time check now at 20 kilometres. Still Francois Pienaar looks as though he may come through here with the best time, but nothing very much. Stephen Roche 32 seconds behind Bernard. Charlie Motte is third, and Delgado has dropped off the leaderboard now at 20 kilometres at the moment. The time check we have, in fact, is that Delgado is now 50 seconds behind Stephen Roche. And this is Laurent Fignon coming up to the finishing line, and look at the time. Fignon really not in this race this year in the time trials. 52.38, 25th place nonetheless. An enormous cheer here from the French crowd for the past double winner of the Tour de France. And now we're back out on the course with Stephen Roche, and his time gap opening all the time over Pedro Delgado. Roche can now settle down, because it's more a question now of how much he'll beat Pedro Delgado by, rather than if. At the moment, his advantage is 1 minute and 6 seconds over Delgado, so Stephen Roche is going nicely now into a 41-second lead overall. Now it's Charlie Motte coming up to the line. Lagiretta is the best time so far, and Motte is not going to beat it. So the rider who is fourth overall in the Tour de France is in with the fifth best time. That'll keep him in fourth place overall today. And there is Delgado picking up his tempo a little bit now as he goes along the flatter roads. He's chosen a gear today of 53, and at the front, that's the front chain wheel, and a 12 sprocket at the back. And Stephen Roche has gambled on a 54th front chain wheel with a 12 sprocket at the back. That means a slightly higher gear, and this is the corner quite clearly both riders are extremely worried about, and Delgado went right onto the sand on the side of the road there. He took it even more cautiously than Stephen.
Well, that is in fact one of the disadvantages of these disc wheels, Phil, is the fact that Delgado goes through the 8-kilometre sign there. It's they are very, very rigid, and a normal spoked wheel would take a little bit of the bend and manage to you'd be able to pull the bike slightly around there. But he came into that corner, it probably slid a little bit, he felt it and he corrected it, and the speed he'd come in, it took him almost off the road.
And now it's Francois Pienaar coming up, and look at this time by the man who surely must win the time trial. The French crowd here are cheering him all the way home. Francois Pienaar. You remember his ride on top of Mont Ventoux. Now you can see him here at Dijon. This will be first place for sure. 48.17, he goes on top, and the crowd are standing up, applauding him all the way home. The time trialist is going to take third place in this year's Tour de France. That is certain now. But it looks as though Stephen Roche is now at 2 kilometres to go. 4 kilometres separate the riders. Of course, they started 3 minutes apart. And Stephen Roche now just under 2 miles away from the yellow jersey, which everyone feels will be the yellow jersey that will decide the Tour de France. What a great, great day now for the Irish tomorrow as Stephen Roche races towards the Champs-Élysées. Nothing to stop him now, Paul.
Well, I don't think there's anything really can stand in his way. He's got just about 1.5 kilometres to go. And with this almost 1 minute and 11 seconds lead coming in now, even if it's to puncture, he would lose something like 15, 20 seconds maybe. And he's coming up to the red kite now, Phil, as he turns left. He's got 1 kilometre to go. He's going to give everything he's got now. We can see him sprinting down here, trying to get every last second out of Delgado.
Squeezing it out second by second. 2-3 days ago, he was fighting back to try and limit those seconds. Now he's trying to get as many as he can, out of the race leader, Pedro Delgado of Spain. A crowd that's waited here since the race started at 11:15 this morning. It's now late into the afternoon, 4:30 French time. They have been waiting just to see two men. All the supporting players have gone by, and I must say, by the way, we're sad to say Sean Yates was unable to start this morning, the British rider from Forest Row, because of his crash previously. He's got a blood-poisoned hand, but this is the finish now, and Stephen Roche is coming up. He's not going to beat Francois Pienaar. We never expected him to, really. He's made the time on Bernard in the mountains. Now, though, he's going to come home with a time that's going to beat Pedro Delgado of Spain to give him the yellow jersey for sure. He's going to just maybe get inside 50 minutes for the ride, and maybe not. No, he was just outside. A superb cheer from this crowd. He goes in second place at the moment. 50 minutes and 1 second is his time, and Pedro Delgado will not match this.
Well, he's not given up, and in fact, he's tried all the way along this tour to get rid of Stephen Roche because he knew Stephen was one of his main rivals. He attacked him on the Alpe d'Huez and put time into him. He attacked him on La Plagne and nearly succeeded. Apart from that incredible comeback of Stephen Roche on the mountain of La Plagne, he regrets now the fact that he attacked so early because he thinks if he'd waited a little bit, he could possibly have put about a minute into Stephen Roche and it would have made it a much closer match today. He also regrets that it wasn't very hot in this year's Tour de France because he thinks if it had been hot all the way through the Tour, then maybe he would have managed to surprise Stephen Roche.
It's a very good point. Who knows what would have happened, because Stephen Roche admits quite openly he hates the hot weather. And had it been hot in the Alps, goodness knows what would have happened on those climbs to La Plagne and Alpe d'Huez. But the Spaniard now, his head down, you can see him gritting his teeth here. He tried, but 50 minutes, 22 seconds is the time that Delgado must arrive by. He's inside a minute to go. He's approximately 1 mile from the finish, so it's absolutely hopeless now. Pedro Delgado is losing that yellow jersey to Stephen Roche, and on the terrain tomorrow up to Paris, it's highly, highly unlikely that he'll be able to attack Stephen Roche, who will have his armed guard from his Italian Carrera team all around him to make sure there are no surprise attacks.
Well, not only will Steve have his armed guard, as Pedro Delgado comes up to the 1 kilometre sign to go, he's got about 25, 30 seconds to do it, and it's quite impossible. But tomorrow when Stephen comes down the Vallée de Chevreuse, those were his old training grounds from when he was an amateur in Paris. He'll know those roads like the back of his hand, and all he'll have to do, he'll have just one man to watch, and that'll be Pedro Delgado. But I think after the performance of Stephen Roche today, I don't really think Delgado will be up to the chance of attacking him. I think Stephen really has won the Tour de France today.
And as Paul says, 50:22 has gone by. So the yellow jersey now is gaining time, and it'll be on the shoulders of Stephen Roche. Every second now is putting Stephen Roche safe for the finish tomorrow. And the skies are weeping for Pedro Delgado as we come towards the finish, but he's been a great, great competitor in this Tour de France. He has produced a real athlete's fight back in Stephen Roche. Every ounce of strength. Delgado comes to the line now, and he really has come with a very good time. Look at this for the 23.6 miles time trial. He's going to be just on 51 minutes as he hits the line. 51 minutes, 0-1 and 0-2 for 7th place. And you know, I do believe the crowd here have given Delgado the loudest cheer for a man who refuses to stop fighting in this Tour de France. And there we have the result today of the time trial that tells the story of the Tour de France. Francois Pienaar wins. He's third overall in the race. Stephen Roche takes second place. He will go into the yellow jersey. And there it is, the yellow jersey confirmed on the shoulders of Stephen Roche of Ireland at the most crucial stage of the Tour de France. Just the stage up to Paris tomorrow. Converting his overnight loss of 21 seconds into a lead. It's still close, but it should be good now for Stephen Roche. There is the overall situation as we go to Paris. Roche leads Delgado by 40 seconds. The closest ever victory margin in the Tour de France is 38 seconds, done in 1968. Stephen Roche won't want to set any records there. He'll just want to be home and dry in yellow tomorrow night.
Timed his run to perfection, hasn't he? Stephen Roche in yellow with just 1 day left. Incidentally, that run today was also good enough to win him back the green jersey. That one, of course, for the most consistent finisher. Well, Well, after the presentations, Roche, naturally a man very much in demand, but he took time out to speak to Paul Sherwin.
Were you worried about this time trial because you've never really been beaten by Delgado before?
No, like I've never been beaten, only been beaten by Delgado in the mountains in time trials. But the way this race was forming, the luck wasn't always on my side. Like the other day when I lost 10 seconds, I lost it stupidly. So that was, for me, that was a sign that maybe things aren't going to go all my way. So I said, well, maybe for once he can beat me, with him starting out behind me and having everything in his favour. So I was a little worried about it.
But the comeback you made up the climb of La Plagne, you've taken back 45 seconds in 3 kilometres. I know it took a lot out of you, but you must have been in excellent, in fact, absolutely fantastic condition to be able to suffer that much.
I think doing what I did on the day was kind of proved that I was in great condition. But what I did the next day really showed that I had the condition, because I finished second at the Morzine the next day, which is another very, very hard mountain stage. So I think that in itself kind of gave me a bit of a boost myself, because I said, well, what happened the other day in La Plagne did take a lot out of me, but still I was able to come around and recover and finish very strongly at the Morzine.
What was your biggest worry in the time trial today? Because I noticed going around the corners when it started to rain a little bit, you didn't take any risks at all, and yet you knew you were well in front of Delgado.
Yeah, because the roads here, like the tyres we use at the moment, that they're very good, but as you've probably seen on the roads, there's a lot of paint on the roads. So if it gets a bit wet at all, it's better when it's really wet, and then you can go around them fast. So when it's only humid or a little damp, it gets very slippy, so you got to be very careful. I didn't want to fall there, like.
And when did you think that you were going to take the yellow jersey from Delgado?
When I finished the line. When I finished here. Like, you never know, like a puncture on the last corner or a fall or anything at all can, he finishes off very fast. You know, you can get time takes along the way, but if someone has slipped up with their stopwatch, and there's so many things, so I just had to give it everything until I hit the line.
So what's in line for tomorrow's stage on the Champs-Élysées? Keeping to the front, keeping out of danger?
Yeah, hopefully keeping out of danger, and hopefully the rain will hold off, because if it rains in Paris on the Champs-Élysées, it's very, very dangerous on the cobbles.
I'd like to know, do you know this young man here, Stephen, standing along here?
Hello. Papa. Papa.
So, Stephen, have you got a quick message for the rest of Ireland who'll be watching on Channel 4 tonight?
What can you say? You know, you never really know the impact of what's happening over here. You never know the impact it has over there, because you never see it. You're always between your four walls of your hotel room. But I think this year, from what we hear, what's going on and everything else, it's really great. And it's great to know that there's so many people behind you. Even if people that can't come here, the people that are behind watching television and shouting for you, it's great encouragement in itself. And me, myself, I go a lot on the encouragement of others, so it's thanks to you all and myself.
Well, I know that the encouragement is going to be there tomorrow, because on Monday there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people in O'Connell Street waiting to meet you, and we're all behind you, all of England, all of Ireland, and all of the rest of the United Kingdom. We'll be with you tomorrow, Stephen.
Thanks very much for everything, Paul.
Thank you.
And you.
It's been a remarkable tour, hasn't it? You can't afford to miss the climax tomorrow. Make a note of our programme time now, 6:15 here on Channel 4. Barring accidents, Stephen Roche will win the Tour de France on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. It's going to be a very emotional day. Good evening.